Ben, you've got a great role at MasterCard. You help think about, and in many ways, I think, decide how a whole lot of money in media is being spent to build the brand, drive your product sales. So much of what we've been talking about here at the Beat Retreat is new ways to do that, the way the world is changing, the evolving ecosystem, if you will, of the television space into advanced TV, into cross-screen. A lot of hope, a lot of promise.
Sure.
I think still early days. How would you consider, how do you think about where the market is right now for these opportunities?
No, I think everything evolves, right? I mean, it's definitely early days. And if we think about, we haven't spent a huge amount of time in the last couple of days, and again, as a marketer, the perspective is a little bit different about, what can we do around consumer engagement? Because it's, for marketers, for customers, to a lot of people in the room, or customers of customers, it's all about how we're driving engagement. And the more fragmented and cluttered the market gets, the more important it is to dig deeper understanding. The digital world and technology gives us an amazing opportunity to dig a lot deeper than we can, but it's hard. It's not as easy as it sounds.
What for you is key to that improving customer engagement? Are you talking about things like the need to change ad formats and think outside the box, if you will, or is it about better messaging? What? Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, we're trying to work backwards. So our ultimate goal, as you said before, was to drive revenue, right? So how do I drive revenue? I got to get closer to consumers and drive affection. So how do I drive affection? We spend a lot of time and energy talking about engagement, right? So we spend a lot of time. Our brand was built on the insight, and it was 18 years ago, so it's a really long time ago. Andy still doesn't know what it was. It was based on the insight that experiences matter more than things, right? So that's our whole brand character and our whole brand ecosystem. So now, today, we actually have an opportunity. We feel like we have an advantage, a potential advantage, to be able to take advantage of it because it's consistent with the brand. A lot of this new technology and a lot of the contextual relevance and people trying to push and poke. If you're a marketer that doesn't really have, a super tight, brand promise that requires relevance, it's a little bit harder to pull off. We think that we're perfectly positioned to be able to do some really cool things in this space.
Well, definitely want to talk about the campaign in a little bit. The Priceless campaign is certainly what you're referring to.
Sure.
But behind there, as you said, you really focused on measuring engagement.
Yep. One
One of the things that I also don't think we spend enough time talking about is just how much work needs to be done for marketers to actually update and rethink about their measurement and metrics. That isn't, that's just not a flick a switch and all of a sudden you measure new things.
No. I mean, it's really hard, especially if you think about even just the basics. Probably the easiest thing to do, the basic media metrics are really easy. You sit there and say you want to look at impressions and click-through rates and all that easy stuff. It's easy to do in the absolute than to try to get, we're a global marketer. We advertise in 65 countries. To go to develop 6 metrics just in media and say, go do that, have 65 people all do it in the same way, shape, and form, especially given a media environment and a digital environment. Even measuring impressions is super hard to find consistency. A little bit less so in the United States, but in some markets, it's really hard. That's super hard in itself. Then when you get into measuring the results on our brand, measuring the results on our business, and then on engagement and advocacy, it's super hard. Even if the most simple global metrics in the world are really hard to kind of keep all the kittens in the box with.
Just as a side note on that, how long have you guys been working on that, would you say?
Well, I've been there. Next week will be 6 years for me. And again, it's not about me, it's about our team. But I mean, we've been trying to evolve. We went public 10 years ago, and then we started to evolve into being a little more driven around consumer marketing rather than be strictly a business-to-business marketer, which we pretty much were for the first 40 years of our existence.
Let's talk about the big media players that you no doubt partner with. And let's start with maybe the more traditional quote players, if you will, the TV side of the aisle.
Yep.
What do you think about a lot of the inventions and investments that those guys are making in audience, and how is that reaching your desk, and those are the types of investments that you guys are testing and trying out?
Yeah, I think that we're again, no one moves as fast as they want to, because we are trying to test and learn in a variety of environments. Again, part of what we talked about a little bit earlier, it's also got to be rooted in messaging, right? Especially for us if we're around contextual relevance. And selfishly, we're around driving purchase behavior. So if I'm a sports guy and you're a travel guy, I want to deliver you the message around go travel to these great Priceless cities, and I want to deliver me a message that says, we're a sponsor of UEFA Champions League, and we can get great, experiences if I use my card. So being able to deliver that is easier. The technology and the ability to deliver those messages is easier. The ability to deliver that, that messaging, that copy, that creative, I can't deliver both the same message. I can, but I'm losing, and I get a little bit of incremental value by being relevant, but it's not anywhere. I can pick my media environments. I can pick the right programs. I can pick the right, times of the day and things like that, and make, a little bit of progress. But any advertising research will tell you that what's the most important variable in the success of advertising? It's the creative. So if we can't figure out how to build the kind of scale that we need to bring that to life, it just slows us down a little bit.
The creative barrier is one that this industry does keep talking about. We seem not to be able to solve that one very easily. I mean, we've spent more time here, and we'll no doubt spend more time now talking about the other pieces of it, but you mentioned that as a key element, and we all know that outside of it has to get fixed, but it seems really hard for big marketers to figure out how to get content created that is as personalized as the segmentation now allows us to be. So why is that so?
Well, I mean, I think it's just the scale and the ability to be able to pull that together. I mean, just the enormity of, instead of producing one piece back when dinosaurs roamed the earth and I worked at an agency and was a media planner and a buyer, you created one piece of advertising and you ran a campaign around it. Now, if we're really bringing the promise to full life, you have to create multiple experiences. One of the things that we've done is we've been, and this is kind of where it becomes even more important to kind of work closely with the media partners, is media owners are, last time I looked, they were in the business of creating content. So rather than just have us create our own message and then run it on their distribution network, utilize them to help us create content, and some of that content might be around experiences. So go work with sports networks to create some really cool sports experiences, and they can produce messaging around it. Food companies, travel travel partners like TripAdvisor and guys like that. So so we're getting into the rhythm of using them to help us create content, because content doesn't need to, there's not just one team that can create content.
Yeah.
They have to use it across the system.
Makes sense. So let's talk, you mentioned experiences there in a couple ways. Let's talk about the consumer experience of consuming content, both advertising and more, quote, native content, if you will, shows, sports, et cetera. What do you think about some of the new experiences being created? The multi-screening, an NFL running on a Twitter, in-feed video opportunities and experiences. What do you think about those as a marketer, I suppose, and maybe as a consumer?
No, I think the more integrated we become, I happen to think that the Twitter NFL idea is a really, really cool idea, because it kind of integrates convergence onto one screen. And even some of the low-tech things, like I think that the partnership that somebody like ESPN, apologies for being too US-centric, did with Twitter to turn SportsCenter Top 10, and if you're a sports person, that's like, you watch that 5 times a day. Turning that into a user-generated content experience was really, really smart. And it's like, rather than ESPN trying to fight social media and try to create their own experience, I thought it was super smart for them to work with Twitter to develop a user-generated experience around, so it's kind of automatic convergence. I think the Twitter NFL partnership is really cool. And I'd like to see, and we've seen data around viewership and things like that, and obviously the NFL viewership is well documented of, the challenge it's had. But I think I'd like to see more around like how much has it driven convergence and conversation around the games. I think it's really cool.
Did you buy in it? Were you one of the sponsors?
We don't do a huge amount of NFL. It's not one of the big things that we support, so we didn't. No.
Got it. Is that, I guess the question there being, what makes you consider some new opportunities like this? As you think about the dollars you're placing, building more experiences, wanting to get more outside the box in some ways, focus on engagement. I assume you're not just focused on spots and impressions.
Correct.
So how do you work with different media partners and encourage that kind of evolution, and or what have you been doing that's you're pretty proud of? I
mean, first of all, we can't eliminate scale, right? So we're a scale marketer. We're a big business. So we're never going to sit there and walk away and say, we don't care about reach and frequency anymore. And it's kind of a delicate place to balance, right? Because you have to we have to still care about numbers, because we're a scale marketer. Like every marketer, ask any marketer if they feel like they have too much money to market, and no one's going to raise their hand. So we constantly have challenges of trying to squeeze and push and pull our resources. So some of the things we've done which engage consumers and have helped us drive drive business. I'll throw out a couple examples because you asked me to. Working with iHeart, we used to buy a lot of money. We used to spend a fair amount of money on radio. Radio is actually social media before there was social media. DJs and word. The influence that they carried was great. So rather than just keep buying spots, we worked around the iHeartRadio Music Festival, right? So how we can get pre-sale so that people can buy tickets early if you use your card. How you can get best seats in the house. How you can get meet and greets with artists, things like that. All promoted and sponsored by their DJs to run through the network. It was the same investment that we made before in the medium, but we drove more engagement. We drove more. We motivated and inspired consumers who cared about music to use our card because you got a benefit. You got to go buy tickets for a really hot concert. That's one example, and there's a bunch of other examples.
Yeah.
And
can you let me know the next time you're going to send one of those emails before they come? I never get there in time. I miss it. I'm busy during the day or something. What kind of switching gears but continue on this theme, obviously a big theme of the conference here is addressable television. What's your thoughts on addressable TV? Are you guys using it, and what do you see as the potential?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same. It goes back to the same conversation that we had before around messaging. I think the technology is there to be able to do some really cool targeting. We want to really, we're doing some small scale test and learns. Again, I wish we moved faster. Messaging, we got to figure it out because again, I think that putting the same message, and dressing against targets is, it gets you part of the way there. But I guess we're kind of, we want to get the message right before we get a little bit deeper into it. But we're dabbling a little bit.
Right. That is different than a lot of the market, right? Because a lot of the market is saying, we know we don't have all the right messaging, but let's try the segmentation and targeting side. Let's see what happens. Let's get some lift.
And we're doing a little bit. I mean, we're doing a little bit, and I do think there are a few brands, and not to make up, we're not the only brand in the world like this, but we're also, we have an advantage of, our brand is all around, the emotional side of an experience being better, being advantage versus the rational side. So that's sort of baked in our brand. So we're trying to make it a little bit more precise before we kind of move forward.
The question here is this balance for a mass marketer like yourself between targeting and scale. As you said, you need scale. But listen, this whole discussion and the industry's trend is around more targetability, around more addressability, even if we define it more broadly than, quote, addressable TV. Yep. But I would think that a key piece of what you're trying to figure out is how to get more granular in your consumer engagement. To your point, you want more creative messaging before it's relevant. Talk about maybe that theme and that process of how you guys continue to think about moving more towards balancing of scale and targeting.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because there's no formula. Obviously, there's no right answer. So we've done a lot of work. Whether we've done some real-time marketing programs in some regions around the world where we are really delivering offers and experiences in real time, and we're changing and optimizing every day. We had a conversation earlier in the group talking about segments, and if there was a question and answer period, I wanted to say, segments should be changed based on performance, it shouldn't be gender or behavior. It should be, what segments are performing today, and I want to go find more of them and build scale, and what segments that aren't working today, then I'm going to go toss them out. So we're doing a lot of work around we're trying to take really what I'll call micro-targeted opportunities and make them bigger scale. And then we're going the other side of the spectrum. We're kind of trying to find those big, broad scale, the big mass TV opportunities, and trying to find ways to drive convergence and drive. We're sort of working it. We're sort of working both ends of the spectrum. I mean, I wish I could say that we're doing a lot of testing and learning. I wish I could. We certainly we haven't hung the mission accomplished banner on the side of the building yet. And anybody who has, I'd challenge anybody who has to think that if they've figured it out by now, then you're either a genius or you're not. So
we'll let everyone else decide.
We still keep working at it.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome, Ben. Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.